Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Catalog Ignite Your Analytics Journey session. I'm Kumar Thangamuthu, Senior Product Manager for information governance related products at SAS, including Lineage, data observability, business glossary, semantic management, and automation using machine learning product designs. Today, we are going to look at some of the expectations and challenges related to data catalog and governance and product walkthrough of SAS information governance. Who wants data? Whose requirements will change? When requirements do change, who will be wanting even more data? In fact, answer to each one of these questions are all of the answer choices. Everyone in an organization wants access to the data, and their requirements do change. And they are subject matter experts or management or regulators to audit compliance. Some of the challenges associated with the digital transformation disruptions are complex ecosystems, democratization, and privacy and ethics. Over the last decade, organizations have been going through massive refactoring of their data ecosystem. With data lakes, data warehouses, new SaaS systems transitioning to cloud platforms, and managing hybrid architecture, sharing data with third-party or acquiring of third-party data. Data volume is growing exponentially as storage cost is shrinking, creating more challenges in terms of data movement and governance. Now, democratization, on the other hand, as organization wants to leverage data as a differentiator to drive innovation and business value, data consumers are requesting more and more data. But at the same time, they wanted to know where it's coming from and how reliable it is. Wasted time, hampered creativity, lack of trust, or some of the lack of trust in the data are some of the byproduct of challenges related to democratization. Now, ensuring privacy and ethics. Organizations are now heavily scrutinized by industry, state, and national regulations such as GDPR, CCPA that are asking for transparency and accountability. Data breaches, compliance risks, policy violations are some of the problems we have seen in various industries. Based on survey results by two biggest challenges in data management are centered around data catalogs, finding and identifying data that delivers value, and supporting data governance and data privacy and security. Now, let's look at SAS information governance. SAS information governance is an intuitive self-service discovery portal to analytics and AI. Analyze and identify data to crawl data from multiple data sources, whether it's in the cloud or on-premise or hybrid environment, to be able to catalog and be able to make it available to search and find, which is the discovery portal where, regardless of what user persona in the organization, they can discover the asset that they are looking for and be able to use the data to create dashboards, models, and decisions, and explore assets, such as be able to run profile and be able to look at the metrics, semantic identification, and information privacy using column graphs and metric identification. And finally, once they are able to look at the data and identify some of the problems, they can take some action, such as be able to apply transformation to prepare the data, or if the business user is happy with the data, they can use the data to create dashboards or models as they continue their analytics journey. Let's dive into SAS information governance product experience. Here we are looking at the SAS information governance discovery portal. User can find some of the summary of cataloged assets. Here there are total assets and the split among different assets that's been cataloged, and also be able to find individual type of assets that's cataloged: data sets, data plans, reports, decision flows. In fact, if I zoom out of this screen, I can see that there are more assets available, lookup tables, rule sets, models, model studio. So thus the catalog at a glance adjusts to whatever the screen resolution that the user is looking at, and can see the split among the different data sets as they increase the size of the screen, just to show different types of assets that's been cataloged. The Discovery portal also supports faceted search. User can look at different facets that are available out of the box. For example, user can look at column facet assets to search on data sets, or individual date facets. For example, when was the last access date of a data set, or any asset for that matter. And try to, for example, I can look at the previous week, and just gives this quick overview and be able to search on different time frame. Or user can also use the date range, to be able to look at specific date ranges. Another key information in this overview homepage of the information governance is recents and favorites. User can look at some of the recent assets they have accessed, and also favorites if they have favorites. For example, I can go here and add this asset and add to favorite, and I can look at these favorites. So this is really useful to customize some of the views specific to the users, relevant to the assets they are working on. Let's say I'm looking for, in this case, the library name. Again, these facets and the searches supports type ahead suggestions. We have all used to public search, where we've used in our daily life providing suggestions, right, as we type. So similarly here, as I start typing, it's narrow down the results to the available facets. In this case, I'm looking for library name, and it also suggests the values based on what has been currently cataloged in the repository. In this case, I'm looking for public. I'm going to search. This is going to give me all the data sets available as part of the public library. So this is really useful. I can look at individual data sets, look at the properties, and also the columns inside the data set, and also look at what is the additional metadata before even I start looking at the complete table overview. What is the completeness, uniqueness, whether there are any privacy information in the table or in the column in this case. And if there are at least one column, private or sensitive column, the table will be classified as information privacy with private or being sensitive. In this case, let's say I'm looking for the data quality parse join, where I'm looking at some of the contact information and be able to parse and look at the data. In this case, let's say I'm looking for data quality parse join table to look at the detailed table overview of the specific table. So right off the bat, I can see that some of the summary information for this data set looks like has some private data. An overall time period covered in this data, looking at multiple date columns, and also the location covered. I can see if I click on it, some of the cities covered, some of the states covered in this data set. This gives me an idea before even I look at the column analysis and detailed column information, overall what this table, setup of this table is. And if this is not the date, cities or state I'm looking for, then I can move over to a different data set. And I can also see some of the private information privacy classification for the columns based on the semantic types identified in this column. So let's say I would like to look at some detailed column information. I can move over to column analysis and look at properties for each of the column. And if I click on each column, it can also provide correlations specific to those columns. And also I can click on the column and look at some detailed column graphs. In this case, I'm looking at gender, and I can see that there is some data quality issues already. There's male, female, male, smaller case, M smaller case. So there is some problem with the data. So we have to do some transformations. So this gives the exploration of assets capability, so a user can, as a subject matter expert of this data, take some decisions. So I can, look at multiple different columns and make some decisions. Or if I know that I would like to improve the quality of the data, I can click on actions and go prepare data. And this will take me to the data preparation portal where user can apply transformation to improve the quality of the data and make it available for business users or data scientists to consume this data. Another thing to highlight here is this data set has been profiled multiple times. I can look at history of this data, and we are looking at the latest profile information along with column graphs. But if I would like to look at the past history of this data set, I can go back, and obviously the user will be notified that they are looking at read-only analysis because this is the past profile run. And you can see that the location information wasn't identified because there was no location data at that point in time. But then user can move to latest history, and they can look at some of the existing overview of the data. This is really useful to look at the change in the data over time. Now, to look at, we were looking at some of the contact information. Now, typically, this data is combined with some of the transaction data or customer review or account data to make some visual dashboard or to be able to create models, either to run a campaign or make some decisions. Let's say I'm looking for some reviews specific to different customers, the contacts that we looked at. Here we are looking at review data, and this gives an information. This has some private data again, some of the time period covered, and also top languages. This is really useful. When we are looking at reviews, what are the languages that the reviews has been written in, right? Obviously, English is the major language here, but there are other languages that gives some information to the modeler or the business user what they are looking at and what columns has been used to identify languages. And I can click on this column, and this will take me directly to the column that has been used, review column that has been used to identify those languages. And I can see that the graphs has been modified, or different graphs has been used dynamically depending on the type of the data that column has. This is really useful. And the column graphs are not static. It changes according to the type of the data in the column. In this case, we're looking at keyword types for important words in that review column. And also language is covered. Here, like we saw in the overview, there are 98% English, and the rest of them are different languages. Even if it is 1%, 0.2%, is really useful for modelers. These outlier languages in this case can be used to either look at overall languages covered, or they can actually remove these and just keep the majority languages covered to focus on the campaign, whatever the decision the data scientist would like to make. And additional information about the review itself, based on sentiment analysis that using the text analytics that we ran behind the scene, you can see that 58% positive reviews, 31% negative reviews, and some of them are neutral. This gives an overall view about what type of review information they are looking at in this data set before they can combine this with contact information and be able to create this analytic base table. I can now move over to the Lineage, and we have looked at the data quality parse join table, and this table was created using a plan, right? Joining a couple of tables. So this gives an overall lineage from what source was used to create these tables. In this case, I can see some CSV files were used to load it into in-memory, and those tables were joined rather, to inside this plan to create this parse join. I can look at details of this table as well. And this table has been loaded into in-memory, and then the loaded in-memory table was used to create a geo monitor report and a model project. This is really useful to look at the business impact view of the business impact lineage view of the data set and other assets like data plans, models and reports and so on. Really useful for auditing, and also the impact of the change in the data set, what will happen to assets downstream, and also changes that happens to the data set upstream. For example, if there are changes to the data in CSV, that will affect these in-memory data sets and possibly the data plans and reports downstream. Now, if I go back to the discovery assets, one last thing we would like to look at, the table where we also provide some geographic information. In this case, let's say I'm looking at some latitude and longitude values in a table. I can quickly look at the latitude and longitude value for this specific table and column customer information, what locations the contact and the customers are coming from. You can see that out of the bat, some of them in various parts in the world, right? So that's really useful if it's a global company and looking at the data that they would like to combine with some of the reviews or transaction data, that what region they are looking at, and they can filter down to exactly what area they would like to look at. Data catalog, or rather asset catalog, to catalog any asset, whether it's a data, report, or model, and governance is at the core of any successful analytics project. Here is my contact. Feel free to reach out for any additional information and questions. Hope this was helpful, and thank you.